Hi, this is Jason Fielder with the Daily Forex Report for June 24th. We are currently looking at the U.S. Japanese yen pair. This particular pair closed up during today's session. Biased is moving sideways. Currently, the pair is moving sideways as well. We do have a potential for this pair to hit 96.66, possibly as low as 94.29. Look for some resistance around 96.37 and look for some support around 95.19. Now switching over to the Euro USD pair. This pair pulled back today. It is moving sideways, biased to sideways. Look for this pair to potentially go as high as 142.42, possibly as low as 137.94. Look for some resistance around 4,000 and look for some support around 138.62 in this particular pair. Now switching to the pound US dollar pair, this particular pair we're looking for closed down, moving sideways, definitely in a sideways bias. Look for this pair to potentially go as high as 167.27, possibly as low as 162.45. Look for some resistance around 165.87. Look for some support around 163.18 in this pair. Let's take a look at the US Swiss. This pair moved much lower on our previous session, and then this past session moved much higher. Definitely closed right at previous or a little bit below previous resistance. Definitely could see this pair go higher potentially. Look for it to possibly go as high as 111.05 and possibly as low as 105.46. Look for some resistance around 1,000 and look for some support around 109.11. Now, what am I looking for during this next session? Well, before we get into that, the U.S. had their FOMC announcement released today. They held rates as expected at 0.25%, and basically they said that inflation has not creeped up as of yet. Now, looking forward to tomorrow's session, we have the U.S. releasing their GDP for the first quarter at 8 a.m. Eastern Time. 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Consensus is that things have stayed the same at negative 5.7%. Looking a little bit further into tomorrow's session, we have the New Zealand dollar releasing their GDP for the first quarter at 6:45 p.m. Consensus is that theirs has increased from negative 0.9% to negative 0.7%. Year to date, though, things have dropped from negative 1.9% to negative 2.3%, which would be, of course, negative news for the New Zealand dollar. Now, what am I looking for as far as potential trades? Look at the pound US dollar pair. This particular pair is moving sideways. It's definitely just moving sideways at this point. It's definitely consolidating down to some degree. Definitely look for, let me zoom back in. Definitely look for a breakout to occur at any time very soon in this particular pair. You can draw a trend line from this point up to here. I'm going to have to change that. Give me 1 second. There we go. And look for potential breakouts along these. You can look for also, if you have a horizontal line here, we can have to change this one too. Okay, there you go. There's, between these two, there is 61 pips. I do believe we could potentially get a much larger breakout than that to the upside. To the downside, we could definitely get a fairly large breakout. You could, I could very easily see it moving from this particular breakout point around the 1.6278 and dropping down to the basically the 6,000 level, which would be roughly 300 pips. looking, let me zoom back in. Basically looking for a short at this point and looking for it to move lower to this point and have an exit here. The beautiful thing about this is you could take, previous resistance and put your stop loss above it, and most likely you would get a good risk to reward ratio depending on which resistance point you set it at. So definitely look for this pair to break out. Don't know if it'll be to the upside or to the downside. If it does break to the upside, look for it to tag this upper point. I realize that's only about 60 pips, but if it pushes higher, at that point you could look to go to break even right here. And if we get a runner to the upside, which is very possible, this trade could be worth several hundred pips, develop into it. If it drops to the downside, of course, we could see it break lower back to previous support. Well, that about does it for today. Until next time, this is Jason Fielder. Good trading.